You stand on Salisbury Plain staring at stones that weigh 20 tons each. Stones arranged with precision that baffles modern engineers. Stones transported from quarries hundreds of miles away before the wheel even existed. But here's what nobody tells you. We're still missing answers. 12 massive questions about Stonehenge that scientists in 2025 cannot explain. And what they've discovered in the last year makes the mystery darker, not clearer. Every time archaeologists think they've solved one puzzle, two more appear. So buckle up. What you're about to hear challenges everything you thought you knew about our ancestors. If you value documented archaeological history and verified scientific research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Nature Journal published August 2024, the Journal of Archaeological Science published October 2024, and peer-reviewed findings from Curtin University's Geological Analysis team. These aren't generic sources. These are ground-level scientific investigations from researchers with hands-on access to the stones themselves, including analysis of core samples that sat in private collections for 60 years. Now back to the information. For decades, everyone assumed it came from Wales with the other bluestones. Wrong. In August 2024, Anthony Clark from Curtin University published findings in Nature that changed everything. The stone's mineral grains are 1,000 to 2,000 million years old. Chemical fingerprints trace it to the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland. 750 kilometers away, that's over 460 miles, before metal tools, before the wheel. Around 2620 BC to 2480 BC, Neolithic people moved this slab the length of Britain. The altar stone measures 16 feet long, roughly 12,000 pounds. The team used age dating and chemical analysis of mineral fragments, compared them to rocks across the British Isles. The match to northeast Scotland was unmistakable. Clark told reporters he initially didn't believe the data. They ran the analysis again, every time distinctly Scottish. The forested landscape and rivers made overland travel nearly impossible. So how? Marine transport seems likely, hugging the coast around Britain, 600 miles by sea. But no evidence of boats that size exists, no harbor infrastructure from that period. Christopher Kirkland, professor at Curtin University, told reporters that moving such cargo overland would have been extremely challenging. The stone's arrival suggests societal organization we didn't think existed in Britain 5,000 years ago. Clark and his team met at Stonehenge in August 2024 for the first time. He described it as surreal. Fog rolling over the hills, cold morning air. But here's the kicker. They still don't know the route. They don't know how many people it took. They don't know why this specific stone was worth the effort. The altar stone now lies flat, possibly crushed by a fallen sarsen. Whether it stood upright originally is unknown. Its exact function? Mystery. Why transport it from Scotland when Welsh bluestone was already being moved? No answer. The two rogue sarsens that don't match. While 50 of Stonehenge's 52 sarsen stones came from West Woods in Wiltshire, two stones refused to cooperate, Stone 26 and Stone 160. David Nash's team at Brighton University ran chemical analyses published in Science Advances in 2020. These two don't match West Woods. They don't match each other. X-ray fluorescence spectrometry showed completely different trace element signatures. Nash's breakthrough came in 2018 when a core sample drilled in 1958 returned to England after 60 years in America. That core from Stone 58 gave them unweathered interior material. 22 trace elements measured. Compared against samples from 20 different sites, 50 stones matched West Woods perfectly. 2 didn't. Here's what makes this maddening. Up to 30 more sarsens have vanished since Stonehenge was built. Were stones 26 and 160 part of a larger group, or are they the only outsiders? We'll never know because the other stones are gone. A January 2024 study in the Journal of Archaeological Science reports tried to solve it. They analyzed 54 sarsen fragments. Some matched Monkton Down, 76 miles southeast. Others potentially came from East Sussex. But the sample sizes are small. The fragments might be from hammerstones, not the main structure, or pieces of missing megaliths. The uncertainty piles up. Nash himself said there are endless questions, endless areas needing investigation. Translation, they're still guessing. Katie Whitaker, co-author, explained the problem. Sarsen stone all looks the same under a microscope. You see quartz sand grains. Visual inspection can't distinguish origin. Only trace element chemistry can. And even then, it's probabilistic. Stone 26 sits in the outer sarsen circle. Stone 160 is part of the inner arrangement. Both are upright. Both show tooling marks. Both were deliberately placed. Were they earlier stones? Later additions? Open question. Because 30 sarsens are missing, the sample is incomplete. Those missing stones might have revealed patterns. Instead, we're left with 2 anomalies and no context. 30 originally stood there. That's 13 gone. Only 6 lintels survive of 30, but archaeological evidence from parch marks in 2013 proves the monument was once complete. That's roughly 300 tons of sarsen and bluestone unaccounted for. Where did it go? William Stukely in the 1720s documented progressive loss. Stones disappeared between visits, broken stumps show deliberate removal, wedge marks. But nobody's found these stones in local buildings. No sarsen fragments turned up when the nearby A344 road was excavated. One theory suggests they were ground into quern stones for grain milling, unproven. Another claims Amesbury Abbey took them after 1539. Speculation. Those 2013 parch marks between stone 16 and stone 21 settled one debate. 4 distinct marks appeared during drought. Parched grass shows where buried stone holes affect growth. Susan Graney from English Heritage confirmed a complete circle existed, so the stones were removed intentionally. By whom? When? Why? Unknown. Station stones 92 and 94 are missing entirely. Bluestones 32, C through 70B, exist only as buried stumps, broken at root level. The destruction was systematic in some areas, random in others. The engineering nobody can replicate. The sarsens aren't just stacked rocks. They use mortise and tenon joints. Protruding stone knobs fit into carved holes in the lintels above. This isn't Bronze Age technology. It's sophisticated carpentry in stone. Each joint required precise carving with stone hammers and antler picks. The sarsen stones are among the hardest sandstones in Britain. Creating these joints took months per stone. Susan Graney examined laser scans in 2020. The stones framing the solstice axis were more carefully worked than others. Vertical sides perfectly framed the sun. How did they know which stones needed extra precision before assembly? English Heritage photos from a cherry picker revealed the system's full complexity. The stones fit together like Lego, but each piece was custom carved. No 2 joints are identical. The lintels also curve to follow the circle's arc. They connect using tongue and groove joints on their sides. It's a 3-dimensional locking system. But where are the practice stones? Where are the failed attempts? Stonehenge shows no failed test joints. Wally Wallington in Michigan demonstrated one man could move multi-ton blocks using wooden pivots and counterweights. He built his own Stonehenge replica using walnut-sized rocks as ball bearings. Moved a 1-ton block 300 feet per hour alone. His method for raising stones involves stacking wooden planks underneath incrementally. Requires 3 people. But even Wallington admits he's working with modern knowledge of leverage. Did Neolithic people independently discover these principles? The joints remain. The methodology doesn't. And here's what nobody discusses. The tooling had to be harder than sarsen. Stone hammers work, but they shatter. Archaeological evidence shows thousands of sarsen hammerstones at the site. Small, fist-sized chunks, worn smooth from repeated impacts, making the hammers became its own industry. 80 bluestones at Stonehenge came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, 220 kilometers away. Each weighs around 4 tons. For years, some geologists argued glaciers carried them. In July 2025, Aberystwyth University said, "There's no evidence for ice transport. The bluestones were quarried. Cut marks prove it." Richard Bevins traced them to Craig Rossi Phelan and Carn Godog. Radiocarbon dating puts quarrying between 3350 BC and 2880 BC. That's 470 years. So humans moved them, 80 stones, 200 miles, 4 tons each, 320 tons total. But how? One theory involves wooden sledges on log rollers. Experimental archaeology showed 25 people could move 1 bluestone this way. Scale that up. 2,000 person trips over 200 miles. Through forests, rivers, and steep terrain. A proposed water route takes bluestones down the Nevern River to the sea, around Cornwall, into the Bristol Channel, up the River Avon, then overland to Stonehenge. Sounds plausible. But building boats for 4-ton cargo in 300 BC? No evidence. A July 2025 discovery adds context. A prehistoric cow tooth found at Stonehenge chemically matches Welsh limestone. Strontium isotope analysis proves it. People, animals, and materials traveled together. Parker Pearson proposed the bluestones came from a dismantled stone circle at Wan Mon in Wales. Empty socket holes match Stonehenge's diameter. Maybe they transported an entire monument. Political union between Welsh and English groups? Speculation. The Royal College of Art study adds another dimension. The bluestones ring when struck. Each has a different tone, a stone xylophone. John Wozencroft said ancient people would have known this. The stones show repeated impact marks. Maybe they were chosen for acoustic properties. Maybe the 200-mile journey was partly musical. worth the effort if music mattered in rituals. But this is still theory. The stones are there, the quarries identified, the route remains unknown. Dozens of subphases, but archaeologists can't agree on the sequence. Phase 1. The ditch and bank started around 3100 BC. A circular earthwork, 360 feet in diameter, 6 feet deep ditch, 6 feet high bank. White chalk excavated from the ditch piled into the bank. The contrast against green grassland would have been striking. Visible for miles, timber structures came next. The Aubrey holes, 56 pits in a circle, held wooden posts or possibly early bluestones, named after John Aubrey, 17th century antiquarian who first documented them, each pit roughly 3 feet across. Spaced evenly around the inner edge of the bank, then bluestones arrived, perhaps around 2900 BC, maybe earlier. Radiocarbon dates are fuzzy. The massive Sarsens came around 2500 BC, that's the standard narrative. But there's a gap, a critical 400-year window between phases where nobody knows what happened. Between 2900 and 2500 BC, 4 centuries. Did construction stop? Did populations change? Did ritual use continue without building? Radiocarbon dates jump from one phase to the next with no continuity. English Heritage admits they found no houses within Durrington Wall's enclosed area, contrary to some TV documentaries in March 2024. Channel 5's Stonehenge. The discovery mistook Woodhenge for the Southern Circle, got basic facts wrong. So where did builders live during the Sarsen phase? A settlement 2 miles away at Durrington Walls housed people around 2600 BC. Radiocarbon dates from pig bones suggest feasting in midwinter, 9-month-old piglets slaughtered around the winter solstice. Bone analysis shows the pigs came from across Britain, Scotland, Wales, northern England. People traveled hundreds of miles to gather and feast, grooved ware pottery found at the site, distinctive style, flat bottoms, geometric patterns. Associated with henge monuments across Britain. But by the time the Sarsens arrived at Stonehenge, that village was abandoned. Population gone, houses empty. Did a new group take over? Different culture? Different purpose? The Stonehenge Riverside Project, led by Parker Pearson, excavated from 2003 to 2008. They found 7 houses along an avenue to the River Avon. Small structures, about 6 megalithic yards square. Roughly 18 feet by 18 feet, hearths in the center, wattle and daub walls, thatched roofs presumably. Each house held maybe 6 to 8 people, 7 houses, 50 people maximum, not enough for a workforce that moved 50-ton stones. The numbers don't add up. Where's the infrastructure for thousands of workers? The encampments, the food storage, the tool-making areas? Parker Pearson estimated Durrington Wall settlement might have held 1,000 houses at its peak. 4,000 people. That's more reasonable. But the dates don't align. The settlement predates the Sarsen phase. When the Sarsens moved, where were the movers? One possibility, seasonal labor. People gathered periodically, worked for weeks or months, then dispersed. No permanent settlement required. But that raises other questions. Who coordinated? Who fed them? Where did they camp? Organic remains like tents and wooden shelters decay. We might never find them, but the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. It's just absence. Another timeline mystery involves the altar stone. When did it arrive? With the bluestones or the Sarsens? Chemical analysis dates the stone's geology to billions of years ago. Useless for construction dating. No organic material attached to date. It could have arrived in Phase 2 with bluestones from Wales. Except it's not from Wales. It's from Scotland. Did Scottish stones arrive in a separate phase nobody's documented? Or did all non-local stones arrive together in one massive gathering of materials from across Britain? The Great Trilithon, the tallest structure at Stonehenge, fell in 1797. Witnesses recorded it. Lightning, earthquake, erosion. The fallen upright now lies across the altar stone. Did the fall damage the altar? Change its position? We can't tell. Excavations in the 1950s and 2000s disturbed the area. Original positions are educated guesses. The avenue, the earthwork pathway from Stonehenge to the River Avon, aligns with a summer solstice sunrise. Its construction date? Around 2500 BC, contemporary with Sarsens? Maybe, or maybe earlier, or later. Dates cluster but don't specify. And here's the confusing part. Durrington Walls has its own avenue. Aligned with summer solstice sunset, opposite direction. The two monuments mirror each other. Parker Pearson proposed they're paired, life and death, timber and stone, living in ancestors. But if they're paired, why the construction gap? Why abandon one to build the other? Why not maintain both simultaneously? No answers. They called it Stonehenge Lego. The Spinal Tap reference was intentional. That movie featured an 18-inch Stonehenge instead of 18 feet. Cox's model hit the same size by accident of scale. Using 3D printed stones and plaster molds, the team recreated 157 stones as they stood in 2200 BC. The model took 9 months to build. 27 stones were 3D printed from laser scans historic England provided. Silicon molds were made from those prints. The remaining 130 stones were cast using plaster polymer water mix. Some hollow plastic filled with aggregate, others solid plaster, gaps filled with children's modeling clay, all surfaces sealed with cellulose car spray paint to prevent sound absorption, mimicking Sarson's acoustic properties. Then they tested sound. The model fit inside an anechoic chamber at Salford University, a sound-absorbing room that simulates open landscape. Microphones and speakers placed at various positions inside and outside the model. Each speaker emitted chirping sounds sweeping from low to high frequencies. The frequencies were modulated 12 times higher than normal because of the scale, ultrasonic range. Results published in the Journal of Archaeological Science showed something unexpected. Reverberation time inside the stone circle was 0.6 seconds for mid-frequency sounds. That's the time it takes sound to decay by 60 decibels. Speech amplified by 10 to 20%, roughly 4 to 5 decibels, comparable to a small auditorium. But sound didn't project outward. People standing outside heard muted, indistinct noise. The stones blocked and scattered sound. No echo formed because the inner stones disrupted reflections off the outer Sarsen circle. It's like a prehistoric amphitheater designed to keep sound in. Music, drums, chanting would have echoed powerfully for those inside, creating an exclusive acoustic experience. Timothy Darville from Bournemouth University noted sound was fairly well contained and insulated from external noise. Cox said this must have been magical for Neolithic people who rarely heard reverberating sound except in caves or narrow rocky gorges. Natural reverb was uncommon. Voices and music normally disappeared into open air, but inside Stonehenge, persistent echo, enhanced clarity. It would have felt supernatural. But here's the problem. Did they plan this? Cox doesn't think acoustics were the primary design goal. He believes astronomical alignment came first. The acoustic effect was accidental, a happy byproduct of stone placement. Or was it? Another study by the Royal College of Art found the blue stones have musical properties. When struck, they ring like bells, drums, gongs. Different stones produce different tones, a lithophone spanning octaves. Researchers spent months in the Preseli Hills, tapping thousands of rocks, recording their sounds. Only certain stones rang clearly. Those are the ones at Stonehenge. John Wozencroft, senior lecturer, said prehistoric people would have known about these capabilities. It's not controversial. Indentations on the rocks prove they were struck repeatedly. Fresh impacts, ancient strikes, the stones were played. So maybe they did care about sound. Maybe the 200-mile journey for Welsh bluestones was partly acoustic. Maybe the Sarsen placement enhanced these effects intentionally. The circular layout creates constructive interference. Sound waves bounce and reinforce each other. The gaps between stones are specific widths. Too wide and sound escapes, too narrow and it deadens. The arrangement threads a needle between containment and openness. Nobody knows. The science says one thing, the evidence hints at another. Rupert Till, musicologist at University of Huddersfield, noted, Stonehenge hums when wind blows hard. The stones vibrate at certain frequencies, creating ambient drone tones, low rumbling. Add chanting or drumming and you'd have layered sound, rhythmic percussion, melodic bluestone rings, wind-generated bass notes, vocal harmonies reverberating. It's a prehistoric concert hall. Whether by design or accident, the result is undeniable. Human ceremonies nearly always involve speech, singing, chanting. Cox's point resonates. Musical instruments existed in Neolithic Britain: bone flutes, pipes, drums, animal hide percussion, horns. They would have sounded amazing inside Stonehenge. If you were important, you'd want to be inside. If you were excluded, you'd hear only muffled noise. That's social hierarchy, encoded in architecture. The acoustic properties enforce exclusivity. Elite insiders experience the full ritual. Common outsiders get the muted version. Deliberate? Accidental? We're back to guessing. But consider this. Other stone circles don't have these properties. Avebury doesn't. Stonehenge's precise arrangement of tall, closely spaced stones is unique. That arrangement happens to create perfect acoustics. Coincidence strains credulity. The Sarsen circle originally had 30 uprights and 30 lintels forming a continuous ring. The scale model proved that completion mattered. Missing stones in modern Stonehenge changed the acoustics significantly. The original configuration was optimized. Break the circle and sound leaks. Maintain the circle and sound contains. That's engineering, not accident. The cremation cemetery nobody expected. Between 1919 and 1926, archaeologist William Hawley excavated 59 cremation deposits at Stonehenge. Burned bones, teeth, fragments, small piles of ashes. Some in the Aubrey holes, some in the ditch, some scattered inside the circle. Hawley documented everything meticulously. Then he reburied most in Aubrey Hole 7 in 1935 because museums weren't interested. No scientific value, they said. Cremated bone was considered worthless. How wrong they were. In 2008, the Stonehenge Riverside Project re-excavated Aubrey Hole 7, 4 sandbags full of cremated remains. How they were originally subdivided, nobody knows. Osteoarchaeological analysis identified at least 25 individuals, counting the most frequently occurring skeletal element, 24 right petrous temporal bones, 22 adult occipital bones, 5 subadult remains, minimum 27 individuals total. Radiocarbon dating placed them between 3180 BC and 2565 BC. The earliest cremation dates to 3030 BC to 2880 BC, from one of the Aubrey holes, roughly when the ditch and bank were cut. The second burial, from the ditch, dates to 2930 BC to 2870 BC. The most recent cremation, a 25-year-old woman from the ditch's northern side, dates to 2570 BC to 2340 BC, right when the Sarsen stones appeared. That's over 500 years of continuous burials, making Stonehenge the largest late Neolithic cremation cemetery in Britain. Over 240 people, estimated total based on excavated areas and unexcavated zones. But here's what's weird. Most cremated remains are adult males aged 25 to 40. The ratio of adults to subadults is abnormally high, 4.4 to 1. Natural mortality curves for pre-industrial societies show 30% or more child deaths. Stonehenge burials don't reflect that. Subadult bone fragments are smaller, easier to identify in cremated remains. They should be well represented, but they're not. Someone was selecting who got buried there. Rigorous selection criteria. Parker Pearson and Andrew Chamberlain proposed these were elites. Possibly a single royal family and descendants over generations. One clue? A polished nice mace head found with one burial. Maces symbolized authority, stone symbols of power. British Parliament still opens with a ceremonial mace today. Only one mace in 59 deposits. That's highly selective. Other grave goods are minimal. Bone and antler, skewer pins, and Aubrey holes 5, 12, 13, 24, and in the ditch. Possibly pyre goods burned with the body. A ceramic object from Aubrey Hole 29. Disturbed deposit. That's it. No rich burials, no gold, no exotic imports. Status marked by burial location, not grave wealth. Being in Stonehenge was the status symbol. 10 of the 25 analyzed individuals didn't spend their last years near Stonehenge. Strontium isotope analysis in 2018, published in Scientific Reports by Christoph Snuck and team, showed these people came from Western Britain. Possibly Wales. Strontium in bones reflects diet and water sources. Geological strontium varies by region. The analysis compared Stonehenge bones to modern plant, water, and tooth samples across the UK. 40% of the sample was non-local. They lived elsewhere, died elsewhere, or moved to Stonehenge shortly before death. Some were cremated elsewhere and brought to Salisbury Plain for burial. Infrared and carbon isotope analysis of the bones showed wood fuel used for some cremations reflected dense woodland. Welsh forests, not Wiltshire's open grassland. John Pouncett, archaeologist at Oxford, said this suggests communities in West Wales didn't just supply bluestones, they were allowed burial at Stonehenge. Strong links between regions. Trade, alliance, kinship, all possible. The cremation process itself is revealing. Temperatures had to reach 700 to 1,000 degrees Celsius, sustained for hours. That requires massive fuel loads, timber, lots of it. Evidence from bone color and fragmentation suggests efficient, well-ventilated pyres. Hot burning, complete cremation, not sloppy, skilled. One burial, excavated in 1978 from the outer ditch, wasn't cremated, a complete skeleton. Male, shot at close range by up to 6 flint-tipped arrows. 2 people shooting, one from the left, one from the right. Execution, sacrifice, battle casualty. The skeleton dates to 2400 BC to 2150 BC. Early Bronze Age, post-construction. Was Stonehenge still active ritually? The burial suggests yes, violence and ritual intersecting. Most burials show careful handling. Bones collected from pyres, placed in organic containers, possibly leather bags. Deposited in pits, sometimes in Aubrey holes that previously held stones or posts, reusing sacred spaces, layering ritual on ritual. Everyone knows Stonehenge aligns with the summer solstice sunrise over the heel stone. The winter solstice sunset frames through the great trilithon. This is textbook archaeoastronomy. But there's a second axis. Gordon Freeman, a Canadian professor, observed Stonehenge for years, starting in the 1990s. He documented a northwest to southeast sightline. This axis points to winter solstice sunrise over Coneybury Hill and summer solstice sunset into Fargo Wood. The angle between the two solstice axes at Stonehenge's latitude in 2500 BC was exactly 80 degrees. And guess what? The altar stone lies at 80 degrees to the primary axis. Not 90, 80. Freeman argues the altar stone was deliberately placed to encode the secondary solstice alignment. Most reconstructions show it at 90 degrees. They're wrong. The alignment runs directly along the altar stone's long centerline. This means the builders understood not just the solar extremes, but the geometric relationship between them. That requires multi-generational observation and record keeping. Where are those records? Oral tradition, lost astronomical tables. The station stones, 4 small sarsens forming a rectangle outside the circle, also align with lunar standstills, the moon's extreme positions every 18.6 years. Clive Ruggles, professor of archaeoastronomy at Leicester, confirmed the station stone rectangle's long sides align with the most southerly moonrise and northerly moonset. In 2024 and 2025, researchers observed the current major lunar standstill to test this hypothesis. Did the monument's builders track the moon for decades to achieve this precision? Almost certainly. Why? Connection to tides? Calendrical system? We're guessing again. Between 2010 and 2014, the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes project used ground-penetrating radar across 20 square kilometers. In June 2020, they announced something staggering. A circle of at least 16 massive pits surrounds Durrington Walls. Each pit is 10 meters in diameter, 5 meters deep. The circle stretches nearly 2 kilometers across. That's Britain's largest prehistoric monument. Dating published in Internet Archaeology in November 2024 places construction around 2480 BC. Vince Gaffney from Bradford University called it unprecedented. The pits aren't natural sinkholes. Optically stimulated luminescence studies confirmed they were deliberately dug and filled. Some pits show evidence of being recut later, suggesting maintenance over centuries. The scale is insane. Durrington Walls itself is 500 meters across with a ditch 17.6 meters wide. Inside, archaeologists found timber circles, a settlement with possibly 1,000 houses, and evidence of massive feasts. Pig bones from all over Britain, grooved ware pottery, stone tools. An avenue connects Durrington to the River Avon, aligning with the summer solstice sunset, opposite of Stonehenge's sunrise alignment. Parker Pearson proposed Durrington represented life and the living, while Stonehenge represented death and ancestors. The two monuments are ritually linked. But then there's this 2-kilometer pit structure. What's its function? Boundary marker? Astronomical observatory? Statement of power? The structure surrounds Durrington Walls without overlapping it. Deliberate planning at a territorial scale. Tim Kinnaird from St. Andrews University, who dated the pits, noted they provide new evidence for plants and animals in the Neolithic landscape. But the why remains elusive, and here's the connection. The pits align with solstitial events and a nearby causewayed enclosure at Larkhill. Wessex archaeology excavated shafts and post lines that appear astronomically oriented. Everything in this landscape connects to everything else. A ritual geography spanning miles, yet we can't decipher the rules. The sun actually rises slightly to the left of the heel stone in 2025. Excavations found a large stone hole to the left of the heel stone. 2 stones likely framed the sunrise originally. One is missing. When did it disappear? Unknown. The heel stone also casts a long shadow into the circle's center at dawn. Was this intentional shadow play? Probably. The long axis of the monument, marked by the avenue leading to the River Avon, aligns perfectly on this sunrise. Gerald Hawkins in 1963 used an IBM computer to check 165 significant features against astronomical events. He found dozens of alignments. Fellow astronomer Fred Hoyle and engineer Alexander Thom supported his findings, but Richard Atkinson published Moonshine on Stonehenge in 1966, tearing the theory apart. Atkinson argued Hawkins allowed 2 degrees of error, making 50-50 probability, not 1 in a million. Some of Hawkins's key sightlines used natural depressions, not intentional markers. The debate raged. Here's what's undeniable. The solstice axis is real. English heritage confirms it. Analysis shows the stones framing this axis were more carefully shaped. Vertical sides, precise placement. But Hawkins claimed Stonehenge could predict eclipses using the Aubrey holes. That's dubious. The British climate rarely allows clear enough skies for consistent astronomical observation. So how precise could alignments be? And yet, the station stones, the altar stone angle, the secondary axis, these aren't coincidences. The builders embedded astronomical knowledge into the architecture. The question isn't whether they understood the sky, it's how deep that understanding went. In 1958, engineers drilled cores through stone 58 to insert metal rods for stabilization. 3 cylindrical cores, each 108 centimeters long, were removed. 2 disappeared immediately. Robert Phillips, an employee of the diamond cutting company Van Mops, kept one. It sat in his office in Richmond, traveled to New York, Chicago, Illinois, Ventura, California, and finally, Aventura, Florida. For 60 years, a piece of Stonehenge lived in America. On the eve of his 90th birthday in 2019, Phillips returned it to English heritage. Heather Seebeyer, Stonehenge curator, said they never expected a call from America about a missing stone piece. But here's why it matters. The core's interior is unweathered. David Nash's team at Brighton University could analyze the exact chemical composition without surface contamination. They used the core to trace the 50 matching sarsens to West Woods. This core is the Rosetta Stone of Stonehenge geology. Without it, the 2020 breakthrough doesn't happen. But think about the implication. For 6 decades, critical scientific evidence sat in someone's living room. What other pieces are out there? Phillips's sons, Robin and Lewis, asked the same question when they returned the core. Robin said it would be fascinating to know where the other 2 cores went. They're still missing. And beyond the cores? Stories persist of tourists taking stone chips as souvenirs. None have ever surfaced in collections. Are they in attics, gardens, thrown away? Every missing fragment is data we'll never recover. The core's return was blind luck, a man's conscience, not systematic preservation. And that's terrifying, because the answers we need might be scattered across the world in forgotten drawers and dusty shelves. Science depends on evidence. When evidence vanishes, mysteries remain. So what are we left with? 12 questions. 12 mysteries scientists in 2025 admit they cannot fully explain. An altar stone from Scotland nobody can figure out how to transport. 2 rogue sarsens from unknown quarries. 300 tons of missing stone erased from history. Engineering sophistication that took centuries to develop but left no practice sites. Welsh bluestones hauled 200 miles for reasons that might include music, politics, or both. A construction timeline with a 400-year gap and no clear workforce housing. Acoustic properties that amplify sound for inner circles while muting it outside, possibly accidental or possibly genius. A cemetery of selected elites spanning 5 centuries, some traveling from Wales to be buried there. A double solstice axis encoded in the altar stone's angle that requires generational astronomical knowledge. A 2-kilometer pit structure around Durrington walls that redefines monumental scale. An entrance alignment with a missing heel stone partner, and contested eclipse prediction capabilities. And missing core samples that returned by chance after 60 years, proving critical data still hides in private hands. Stonehenge isn't a solved puzzle with a few gaps. It's an actively deepening mystery where each answer spawns new questions. The 2024 and 2025 findings don't close cases. They split them open. Anthony Clark's work on the altar stone proves Neolithic Britain had continental scale networks. But how? Trevor Cox's acoustic model shows sound engineering, but was it intentional? Parker Pearson's burial analysis reveals elite selection. But what defined that elite? Every discovery underscores one fact. We've underestimated our ancestors. Monumentally underestimated them. The bluestones still ring when struck. The acoustic chamber still amplifies voices for those inside. The double solstice axes still point to Coneyberry Hill and Fargo Wood. The altar stone still lies at 80 degrees. And beneath Durrington walls, those 16 pits form a circle whose purpose we'll probably never know. Scientists keep digging, keep analyzing, keep dating. But Stonehenge yields answers slowly, reluctantly, like it's testing us, seeing if we're worthy of understanding. In 2024, researchers confirmed the altar stone traveled from Scotland. That's progress, but they still can't say how. In 2020, they proved the acoustics amplify sound. But they can't say if it was planned. In 2018, they showed some cremated remains came from Wales. But they can't say why those specific people deserved burial at Stonehenge. Progress isn't the same as answers. Not here. Not with Stonehenge. The monument's reputation as a mystery isn't marketing. It's reality. Verified by every journal article, every excavation report, every carefully worded academic paper that ends with further research needed or the evidence remains inconclusive or we cannot determine with certainty. Those phrases fill the literature because honesty demands it. Transport logistics that would challenge modern engineering. Astronomical observations spanning decades or centuries. Social structures complex enough to select elite burials. Political alliances that stretched from Scotland to Wales to Wessex. all before writing, before metal tools, before any civilization we'd recognize. The Neolithic people who built Stonehenge had technology we consider primitive, but they achieved things we can barely replicate. That gap between their tools and their accomplishments is the real mystery, not the monument itself, the minds behind it. What did they know that we've forgotten? What oral traditions carried information across generations? What astronomical records existed in forms that left no trace? What engineering principles did they discover independently? These aren't romantic questions. They're practical ones. Because the evidence stands. The stones are real. The alignments are measurable. The acoustic properties are quantifiable. The cremation deposits are carbon dated. The chemical analyses are peer-reviewed. This isn't speculation. It's documented fact. The mystery is reconciling the facts with the supposed limitations of the era. And every time scientists think they've narrowed the gap, new findings widen it again. The altar stone from Scotland doesn't simplify the story. It complicates it. The 2-kilometer pit circle at Durrington doesn't clarify the landscape. It makes it more elaborate. The acoustic properties don't reduce Stonehenge to a single function. They add another layer. Complexity is the pattern, not simplification. So we return to those 12 mysteries. The altar stone's 750-kilometer journey with no route. The 2 mismatched sarsens with no source. The 300 missing tons with no location. The mortise and tenon engineering with no practice run. The bluestone transport with no clear motive. The construction timeline with no workforce housing. The acoustic amplification with no confirmed intent. The selective cremation cemetery with no inclusion criteria. The double solstice axis with no observation records. The Durrington pit circle with no stated purpose. The missing heelstone partner with no removal date. The 60-year lost core sample with 2 others still missing. 12 questions, 12 admissions from the scientific community. We don't know. We're still investigating. The monument is 5,000 years old. It predates the Egyptian pyramid's peak by 500 years. It's been standing longer than Rome existed as an empire, longer than Christianity has existed as a religion. It's outlasted kingdoms, languages, entire civilizations. And it's still making fools of us, still hiding its secrets in plain sight, because the stones talk. But we don't speak their language, not yet, maybe not ever. In a soil pit outside the monument's fence, researchers found something in 2020 that might be the only honest statement Stonehenge will give us. Layers of sediment dating back to the monument's construction showed one thing clearly. The landscape changed. Forests became grassland. Rivers shifted course. Climate fluctuated. Societies rose and fell. But the stones remained, unchanged, unmoved, watching human history like a sentinel that refuses to speak. That's Stonehenge's final mystery. Not what it meant to the people who built it, but whether we're capable of understanding what they understood. Whether our science, our technology, our modern brains can access knowledge preserved in silent stones. The answer right now, after centuries of study, after geophysical surveys and radiocarbon dating and chemical analysis and astronomical modeling, is maybe. Maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe the next excavation will find the Rosetta Stone that unlocks everything. Maybe one of those missing core samples will turn up and reveal the transport method. Maybe some ancient text will surface explaining the rituals. Maybe, but probably not. Because Stonehenge wasn't built to be understood by future generations. It was built for the people who made it, for their purposes, their beliefs, their reasons. We're just tourists in their cathedral, guessing at the meaning of prayers we can't hear, and that ultimately is the 13th mystery, the one nobody lists, whether understanding Stonehenge is even possible, or whether some knowledge dies with the people who held it, leaving only monuments behind, stone fingerprints of vanished minds. That's what stands on Salisbury Plain. 5,000 years of silence, 12 unanswered questions, and counting.